in this video we will see how to write the code which finds the sum of even numbers. So let's have a list of numbers, and this list can contain different numbers. Let's just add random numbers here. And how we can get all the even numbers. So even numbers are 0, 2, 4 and so on. And what is the sum of those elements? So what we have to do, let's say we have some numbers here. And so on. So what we want to do, we want to find out the even numbers here. So let's add some, let's say it's 9 and 6. And we want to sum all those numbers. So we will, in the end, we will add 2 and 4 and 6, and we should get 12. And how to write this code. So what we can do, if we have a list, we can take every element and do something with this element. So what we can do, we can take the first element and see whether it's an even number or not. So in order to do that, it's one way to do it is to find a module or the remainder of when we divide this number by 2. So if we take the 1 and we divide it by 2, the remainder is 1. So it's not an even number. If it's not an even number, we just ignore it and we can move on. So now we can take the second element and see whether this is an even number or not. Because it is, then let's say we take it. Whatever it means, we can say let's say that 2 is suitable for us, and let's do something with that. Now we can move on and so on. So as we can see, we just have to take every element, and based on some condition, we can say whether we want to take this number or we don't. So in the end, we will take this 4 and we will take this 6. Now the question is what to do with those numbers, how to add them up. There are actually several ways to sum all those numbers. One way would be to kind of do it manually. So we will have a variable, let's say total, which is 0 in the beginning. And every time we can find an even number, we just add this number to it. So we basically do plus 2. So total will be now 2. Here we do plus 4, then it gets 6, and here we do plus 6, and then it becomes 12. This is the value of the variable total. The other way would be to add those numbers into, let's say, evens list. And in the end, we will have 2, 4, and 6. And now we can use Python's way to sum elements in list. This is basically sum, it's a function sum, and here we can write the list. So what happens is that it takes every element in this list and sums those up and gets us the sum, so it will be 12 also. Let's write it the same thing in code. So first thing we want to do is we want to take every element to check whether it's suitable for us. For that we can use for loop for element in numbers, and here I can just print out elements just to be sure that I take every element from the list. And as you can see, I have a list. So the first element is 1, it is printed out. Then the second element is 2, and it's also printed out, and so on. So okay, we get every element in the list. Now we would only like to get even numbers from this list. To do that, we can use if conditional, and the condition here is whether it's true, then some code can be executed. And as we want to get even numbers, we can write it as element remainder by 2, or if we divide this element by 2, what is the remainder? And as if this operation gives us 0, this means that this is an even number, then we can do something. Let's add this print. I just added some intent for this line. So now the print is under the if condition. So if the if condition is true, then this print is executed. Otherwise, nothing is done. And if I execute the code, you can see I only get even numbers from this list. Now let's see. I can solve this problem by 2 different ways. Let's say I have a variable total, which is 0 in the beginning, and every time I get an even number, I just say that total is current value of total, and I add element value for this for the total. So what happens is that in this case it takes total, which is 0, adds 2, it becomes 2, and this value is written into total. Now if I get here, I take current value of total, which is 2, I add 4, the sum is 6, and now the value 6 is written into this value. So I will calculate the right side of this expression first. So I get the sum of those elements, and now I write it into this value. So the total is overwritten by the new value. And in the end, let's just write the total value. So if I execute the code, you can see that the result is 12. The other option would be to use built-in function sum. For that I can write an additional list evens, for example. So that's the list of even numbers. And instead of, I can keep this code here also, but I will just add evens, that's a list, and I append, I add a value to the end, I append element there. In the end I can print out what is the values, what are the values in the evens list. I will just take this out, comment this out, so if I execute the code, this total is not printed. And as you can see, I have a list here of 3 numbers. Those are the even numbers I just gathered during this condition. And now what I can do, I can just print out the sum of evens. And as you can see, the sum of those numbers is 12. Also, I want to point out that when I was picking the name for this variable total, I could have used sum, but the problem with sum is that this is also the name of the function. And if I would use sum here, it would mean that my code sees this sum as variable, not the function anymore. So I cannot use sum function in my code. So it is wise to not use the variable names which are the same as some functions or other built-in methods and so on. Although Python allows you to do that, so it's not a problem to kind of write change the name of the variable sum. I can change it here also. It kind of works, but the problem is that this line here gives me an error. And the error is that the problem is that the sum for the code now is just a value. It's just like the integer value or the number, and I cannot kind of call out something from this integer value. So for that case, I cannot use this print here. So it would be wise to not use those names especially if you know sum is one of the examples. Depending on your IDE or where you write your code, it can give you some pointers for that. So here it probably gives me some, yeah, it tells me that it shadows built-in name sum. So it's not wise to use that. So I will just undo and use total here. So, and that's the way how to get even numbers out of the list and add those up.